So let's take a look at one way you can create a menu in the kit to jump around pages. You can click down on a button that is going to open up your menu, and from that point a pan gesture is activated, and what that means is that anytime you kind of pan around with your finger on the screen, it's going to move these thumbnails based on that. And right now I've got this just activated on the x-axis. You could have it activated on both of them, so if you wanted to have kind of a really fluid, kind of giant multi-column, multi-row thing of thumbnails, that too is possible. And the difference with a pan gesture versus, say, one where you're just following the user's touch. Let me close this. This right here, you see how the star is kind of always going to be locked onto my following touch. Well, gravity's pulling it down too, but the difference with a pan is you'll notice I can move this off to the side and then keep moving it when I press down anywhere else on the screen. So you'll notice too when I close this up, the thumbnails will kind of animate themselves back into place again. And you can have an unlimited number of them. And I've also put in some code where if you kind of move it off like this, it'll slide just a little bit back into place, just kind of so it's not so abrupt. So hopefully you get the idea. And let's take a look at how you can set that up. Well, first off, let's go over here to our cover, and let me delete this out for right now. Okay. Neat thing in Xcode 7 is you can actually create references that contain objects that you can drag in as a reference, kind of a group, to another scene. So what I did here was I just went over here to new file, and I created a new sprite kit scene. I named it menu, and I put it in here with all of my other scene pages. So from that point on, then what I did was I just dragged in just a color sprite. I found the texture that I wanted. In this case, it was just there we go. Get my keyboard. My fingers on the keyboard. So I found menu 1, for example, and then I gave this a name. So if I was going to do this again, of course, it would end up being menu 4. And to interact with anything via the property list, you're going to want to set the custom class to element. And then what I've also done is made it so that I've got placeholders to put these menu items back in place again. Otherwise, when I kind of move them off screen and I show them again, they could potentially still be off screen. So this is just an empty node, and of course I'd want to kind of make sure that these are all at the same y-axis. So in this case, I'm going to give it a name. Let's say menu placeholder 4. And what did I set that to? 172 over here. Okay, perfect. Now, because I can get away with actually just calling this menu placeholder 4. I don't have to put in here a custom class of element. It's not a hard and fast rule that you always have to give these a custom class of element. If it's just going to be something like you're just moving it around using basic properties, you can get away with that, but it's not going to hurt it if you did go ahead and give it a name of element. All right, so back over here in our main scene, all I have to do is drag my menu in. All right, so you can see it's right there. My placeholders are right over there. And one thing that you should always remember is that when you're going to use these reference nodes to kind of keep the coordinate system locked into place, best thing to do is just go ahead and position your reference at 0x and 0y, and then you'll see this right over here. And if you wanted, you could even name this reference node. You don't have to, but you could call it something like menu. You could even interact with it via the properties over here as well. Reference nodes don't, though, have a custom class property, so you are kind of limited in some sense as to how you're going to interact with them. And somehow I bumped my rotation off. There we go. Let's set that back. Now we're ready to go, and let's take a look at the properties that we've got to work with in the kit. If you are going to be working with elements that are going to appear on multiple pages, you probably don't want to put them inside of your pages dictionary. So for example, this is cover, there's my cover scene, and right inside of here I could define data for specific elements to that scene. But what I've done is I've given you guys the option of storing elements outside of your pages. So this is in the root of the dictionary here, and you can see obviously I've got my menu button, menu 1, menu 2, and menu 3, and these 2 buttons right here don't really have anything to do with what we're doing. So back over here in cover, let's take a look at this. If you notice, I've got menu button, right, and this is an element, all right, so I can interact with it. And in my property list, the settings I have for my menu button are a touch event. So when I click down on it, or tap down on it, I should say, we're going to do these 3 events. And the first one is add or remove pan on X. And that means that I'm going to add I'm going to add functionality for these nodes to follow the pan on the x-axis. And if I wanted to do one for the y, all I'd have to do is also add in here y, right? And you'll notice that this is an array type, so it's got multiple values in here. And for each one of these items, I just put in here the name of the element that I want to move around panning wise on the x-axis. And you could just put in here pan x, and it's going to add them as something that's going to move around. But what I want to do is use add or remove, so I basically toggle them on or off every time I press the menu button, because we're using that same button to make them not pan, to go back away, to hide themselves. And the same thing is true over here with show or hide. You'll notice if I unfold this, I've got all 3 menu items in there. So if they were hidden, they're going to get shown. If they're showing, they're going to get hidden. And then I've also got in here animate node to node, and you can see now we've got menu 1 is going to go to our menu placeholder 1, and so on like that. Then for our actual menu items, you can see too that we've got a touch-up event, and all this is doing is just going to a specific page, open page, that's going to be cover, there's the cover. If you look at menu 2, touch-up event, open page, that's going to gumball. And then for the other properties, we've got, this is set to hidden initially, so when the kit first loads up, they're going to be hidden. And then I've got in here another property, which is ignore all touch events when hidden, that's set to yes. So you couldn't even if it was on screen, you couldn't tap down on it and have the touch up event occur. And for these menus, I found that it was better to put in a touch up event than a touch event, because you could still kind of pan around on top of them. And it's when you do a touch up event, basically you have to be kind of not panning, and then you press it, and then when you release up, you're going to go to that particular page. And that is it. So you could put in here an unlimited number of menu items if you wanted. And what's really nice about this is that for future pages, all I'd have to do is just drag in menu, put it over here at 00, put in the menu button, and we are good to go.